Did you know that over 500 people have lost their lives in combat sports, with some tragedies happening right before a shocked audience? From unsanctioned fights with no safety measures to professional matches with deadly consequences. Here are 20 fatal accidents in martial arts history. 1. The death of Douglas Dedge, 1998. Douglas Dedge wanted to prove himself in a fight that should have never happened. In 1998, he entered the ring in Kiev, Ukraine, for an unsanctioned MMA match, a fight without proper rules, medical supervision, or safety measures. He had already been warned about his health, but warnings did not stop him. He ignored the signals his body was giving him, believing his willpower was stronger than any medical concern. But willpower can only take a person so far. The fight was brutal. His opponent landed heavy strikes, and the crowd cheered for the relentless action. Dedge refused to back down, his determination masking the real damage taking place inside his skull. Then came the knockout. His body gave in before his spirit did. He collapsed, his body shutting down before anyone could react. The ring, once filled with adrenaline, was now eerily silent. Paramedics rushed in, but the damage was done. The brain injuries were too severe. His heart was still beating, but his body had already lost the battle. By the time medical help arrived, he was fading. There was no coming back. The first recorded fatality in modern professional MMA had just happened, but few truly learned from it. The sport continued, growing bigger, faster, and more dangerous. But Dedge's story remained a chilling warning. Ignoring safety can have deadly consequences. 2. The fatal injury of Sam Vasquez, 2007. Sam Vasquez knew the risks, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened in 2007. It was a sanctioned MMA event in Houston, Texas, a professional fight with all the required medical precautions. But rules don't make fighters indestructible. The match was intense, pushing both competitors to their absolute limits. Every hit, every kick, every moment in that cage added more damage to his body. Then came the third round. A brutal hit sent Vasquez crashing to the mat. His body went limp, the crowd fell silent. He didn't move, he didn't try to get up. The fight was over, but something was terribly wrong. Medical staff rushed in, but the damage was already too much to fix. His brain had suffered a catastrophic subdural hemorrhage, a condition where blood builds up between the brain and skull, crushing the brain from within. A body can only take so much before it gives in. Emergency surgeries were performed, but it was too late. He never woke up. Days later, he was gone. His death sent shockwaves through the MMA community. This was not an underground fight. This was not a reckless event with no supervision. This was a sanctioned fight with rules, doctors, and safety measures. And yet, it still ended in death. His passing became a painful reminder that the line between sport and tragedy is often razor thin. 3. Michael Kirkham's doomed debut, 2010. Michael Kirkham had waited years for this moment. His professional MMA debut in South Carolina in 2010 was supposed to be his first step toward a successful career. But his fight ended in disaster. The energy in the arena was electric, the air thick with excitement. Kirkham stepped into the cage, unaware that this would be his first and last professional fight. The opening moments were fast and aggressive. His opponent came at him hard, landing strikes that shook him, but Kirkham kept going. He had trained for this. He had dreamed of this. Then the knockout punch came. It was swift and brutal. His body hit the ground hard. He didn't move. The referee stepped in, waving the fight off. But Kirkham was still on the mat, his body motionless, and seconds passed. Then minutes. Panic spread. The referee signaled for medical personnel, but there was no response from Kirkham. The crowd watched in horror. Paramedics rushed in. The reality set in. This wasn't a normal knockout. Kirkham was rushed to the hospital, but the diagnosis was grim. His brain had suffered massive trauma. He had bled internally. His body couldn't recover. 2 days later, he was pronounced dead. The dream of being a professional fighter had cost him everything, and once again, the sport was forced to face the brutal reality of its dangers. But would it change anything? 4. The sudden collapse of Tyrone Mims, 2012. Tyrone Mims was ready for his amateur MMA debut in South Carolina. He had trained hard, pushed himself to the limit, and stepped into the cage, believing he had what it took. His heart pounded, adrenaline rushing through his veins. He wanted to prove himself. The fight was fierce. Both men fought with everything they had, exchanging brutal strikes, testing their endurance, pushing past pain. The second round was the breaking point. Mims took heavy hits. He struggled, his body starting to fail him, but he didn't realize it yet. The referee stepped in, stopping the fight. Mims seemed exhausted, but fine. He left the cage, his body drenched in sweat, his breathing heavy. But then everything changed. His body suddenly shut down. He collapsed. His heart stopped. Panic erupted as medical personnel rushed in, desperately trying to revive him. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Doctors did everything they could, but his body had already given out. The cause of death remained unclear. The autopsy provided no definite answers. Some believed it was his heart. Some believed it was overexertion. The only certainty was that he was gone. He had walked into that cage with dreams of victory. He never walked out alive. His death was another grim reminder that MMA is not just a sport. It is a brutal, unforgiving world where one wrong moment can cost a fighter everything. And no amount of preparation can truly protect a fighter from what lurks in the shadows of the cage. 5. Buto Guilane's fatal injury, 2014. Buto Guilane, a South African mixed martial artist, stepped into the cage in 2014, ready to fight. He had trained for this moment, prepared for battle, and dreamed of victory. But no amount of training could have saved him from what was coming. His opponent delivered brutal elbow strikes, each one landing with sickening force. The crowd roared, the announcers shouted, but no one knew that the worst had already begun. Guilane fell, his body crashing to the canvas, his mind slipping into darkness. His eyes fluttered, his breathing was heavy, and he was barely moving. The referee called the fight, but the damage was done. Medical staff rushed in, lifting his limp body onto a stretcher. He was taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered his brain was swelling rapidly, bleeding internally, struggling against an injury too severe to heal. Machines beeped, nurses worked, but Guilane's condition only worsened. His family waited, hoping for a miracle, but none came. Less than a week later, he was gone. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the fighting world. Was the referee too slow to stop the fight? Did the doctors act fast enough? Could his life have been saved? The sport he loved had taken everything from him. His death remains a haunting reminder of the brutal risks fighters take every time they step into the cage. 6. João Carvalho's fatal bout, 2016. João Carvalho was a warrior. He had spent years training, sharpening his skills, preparing his body for the brutal reality of professional fighting. In 2016, he entered the ring in Dublin, Ireland, full of determination. He wasn't just fighting for victory, he was fighting for his future. But by the end of the night, that future would be gone. He fought hard, pushing through exhaustion and pain, refusing to back down. The referee finally called a technical knockout, but it was already too late. His body was breaking down, his brain screaming for help. He sat in his corner, dizzy, disoriented, struggling to breathe. Something was wrong. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered a severe brain injury. Emergency surgery was performed in a desperate attempt to save him. His family prayed, fans hoped, but nothing could change the damage that had already been done. 2 days later, João Carvalho took his final breath. His death raised questions that no one wanted to answer. How could this happen to a trained athlete? Should the fight have been stopped sooner? Did medical staff miss warning signs? The world of martial arts had lost another fighter, another son, another dreamer. And just like before, the sport carried on, while his family was left to grieve. 7. Dante White's collapse, 2017. Don Shea White, a 37-year-old amateur fighter, walked into the ring that day unaware that he was walking toward his own end. He had fought before, had felt the rush of competition, had tasted both victory and defeat. He believed he was ready. But nothing could prepare him for what would happen next. After a brutal battle, he suffered a technical knockout. He was exhausted, but no one thought anything was seriously wrong. He stood, walked back to his locker room, and then everything changed. Without warning, his body gave up. He collapsed, hitting the floor hard. The room erupted in panic. Medics rushed in, trying desperately to save him. But no matter what they did, it wasn't enough. His heart had stopped. Later, doctors determined he had hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, a condition that made him a walking time bomb. His heart had been in danger long before he even stepped into the ring. But why wasn't this caught earlier? How did he pass his medical exam? Could this have been prevented? His case forced the martial arts world to face a harsh truth. Fighters were entering the ring with undiagnosed health problems, and some were paying the ultimate price. His family was shattered, his friends were in disbelief, and the sport that he loved carried on. How many more fighters are out there, one punch away from disaster? 8. Dennis Munson Jr., fatal debut, 2014. Dennis Munson Jr. had one dream: to become a fighter. He had trained for months, pushing his body to the limit, excited for his first ever kickboxing match in 2014. But what should have been the start of his career became the end of his life. From the very beginning, something was wrong. His movements were slow, his stance unsteady, his reactions delayed. His body was failing him, but no one stopped the fight. His coaches shouted instructions. The officials watched. The crowd cheered. And Munson kept going, even as his body begged him to stop. His breathing became heavy, his legs wobbled, his head hung low, and still the fight continued. When the final bell rang, he didn't celebrate. He collapsed. The cheers turned into screams. Medics rushed to his side, but it was too late. His brain had suffered massive trauma, worsened by extreme dehydration from weight cutting. His body had been pushed too far, and the people who should have protected him, his coaches, the officials, the medical team, had let him down. Why didn't someone stop the fight? Why didn't anyone step in? His death shook the combat sports world to its core. It was preventable. It should have never happened, but it did. And now the question remains: how many more fighters will have to die before real change happens? 9. Vladimir Smirnov's fencing disaster, 1982. The 1982 World Fencing Championships in Rome were meant to be a grand display of skill, honor, and competition. But what happened on that day shocked the entire world and changed the sport forever. Soviet fencer Vladimir Smirnov, a champion known for his precision and speed, faced off against West German opponent Matthias Baer. They exchanged attacks, blades clashing, moving with the expertise of seasoned professionals. Then, in a fraction of a second, disaster struck. Baer's blade snapped under pressure, sending the broken metal flying straight toward Smirnov's face. No one had time to react. The blade pierced through his protective mask, driving deep into his skull and causing catastrophic damage to his brain. He collapsed instantly, but the horror was far from over. Doctors rushed to save him, performing surgery and monitoring his condition. But the injury was beyond repair. Smirnov lay in a coma for 9 agonizing days before finally succumbing to his wounds. The fencing world was left in shock, forced to confront the terrifying truth. Safety measures had failed him. How could a mask meant to protect allow such a tragedy? His death led to major rule changes, new equipment designs, and strict safety regulations. But for Smirnov, it was too late. His final match ended in the most horrifying way possible, a brutal reminder that even in sports built on precision and control, a single unexpected event can turn deadly in an instant. 10. Deadly Lei Tai competitions in early 20th century China. Lei Tai fights were supposed to showcase the best of traditional Chinese martial arts, strength, skill, and discipline. But in reality, they were often brutal, ruthless, and even fatal. Fighters stepped onto a raised platform, knowing that they had only two ways to leave: victorious or severely injured. There were no padded mats, no referees to stop a match if it got too dangerous, and no protective gear. Combat was raw and unforgiving, with some fighters using deadly strikes meant to cripple or eliminate. The 1928 national competition in China became one of the bloodiest on record. It was supposed to be a grand tournament, gathering the best fighters from across the country. But it quickly turned into chaos. Several martial artists died during their matches, either from direct hits or injuries that proved fatal soon after. Some collapsed right there on the lei tai, their bodies lifeless, while others were carried off in agony, never to fight again. The sight of competitors being knocked unconscious, coughing up blood, or simply never getting back up sent shockwaves through the audience. Organizers realized that if they didn't put a stop to it, more deaths would follow. The competition was halted, and from that moment on, rules were changed, restrictions put in place, and the era of reckless lei tai battles began to fade. But the damage was done. The memories of those fights, the screams, the silence after a final deadly strike would haunt those who witnessed them. The blood spilled on that platform became a reminder that while martial arts are about skill and discipline, they can also be deadly. The lei tai arenas may have changed, but the ghosts of those who fell will never truly leave. 11. Alex Robinson's play fight death, 2023. A simple night among friends, filled with laughter and fun, turned into a nightmare that no one saw coming. In May 2023, 20-year-old Alex Robinson was enjoying a night out with friends. They had been drinking, letting loose, and fooling around like young people do. Then someone suggested a play fight, a harmless way to test strength to see who could overpower the other. It wasn't meant to be serious, but play fights can turn real in an instant, and that's exactly what happened. Someone put Alex in a chokehold, thinking it was just a game, just another playful wrestling move. But the grip tightened. Alcohol dulled their judgment, made them think it was all just fun. Alex stopped moving, but no one noticed. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was already too late. His body was limp, his face pale. Panic set in. Someone shook him, someone else shouted his name. They tried to wake him, but he wasn't responding. Calls were made, attempts at CPR followed, but nothing worked. By the next morning, Alex was officially declared dead. A young man, full of life, gone in a moment of foolishness. What started as a night of fun ended with unbearable grief. His friends were left haunted by guilt, knowing they had been part of something that could never be undone. The lesson was clear. Play fights are never just games. One wrong move, 1 second too long in a hold, and a life can be lost. Alex's death was tragic, preventable, and a painful reminder that carelessness and alcohol are a deadly mix. The night that started with laughter ended in silence, and that silence would never be broken. 12. Mohit Sharma's fatal collapse, 2025. Mohit Sharma was young, strong, and talented, a champion in the making. At just 21 years old, he had already proven himself in the world of wushu. He trained hard, fought harder, and had his eyes set on a bright future. But on one fateful day in February 2025, all of that came crashing down in the most devastating way possible. It was a high-profile tournament in India, and the crowd was eager to see their rising star in action. Mohit stepped onto the mat, ready to fight. He won his first round with ease, moving with confidence and power. Then came the second round. But something was wrong. His stance wavered, his breath came short. Before anyone could react, he stumbled forward and crashed onto the mat. At first, the audience thought it was a mistake, a moment of exhaustion. But Mohit wasn't moving. Officials rushed in, medical staff hurried to his side, but nothing could be done. His pulse was weak, his body unresponsive. The tournament hall fell into chaos as they tried to save him, but by the time he reached the hospital, it was over. The doctors confirmed the worst. Mohit Sharma was gone. A heart attack was suspected, but no one had seen it coming. He had shown no signs, no warnings. One moment, he was a competitor. The next, a tragedy. His death sent shockwaves through the martial arts community, raising questions about the risks of extreme physical training. Could it have been prevented? Was there something undetected in his health? These questions lingered, but one fact remained. Mohit Sharma, a fighter with so much ahead of him, had fought his last match. His loss was felt deeply, a reminder that even the strongest are not immune to fate's cruel hand. 13. Alfredo Castro, Herrera's fatal bout, 1981. April 1981 turned into a nightmare for 15-year-old Alfredo Castro Herrera, a young fighter full of promise. He stepped into a brutal match in Tijuana, Mexico, where boxing, karate, and judo were combined into one dangerous fight. The crowd cheered as blows were exchanged, but no one realized how deadly this battle would become. Punches and kicks landed hard, testing the limits of what the human body could take. Then something went terribly wrong. Alfredo took a final, devastating hit, and he went down. What should have been just another match became his last. He was rushed to receive help, but it was already too late. A boy with dreams of victory had lost everything. Could this have been prevented? This fight should have never happened without the right safety rules in place. Young fighters should be protected, not put in situations where survival is left to chance. Yet, time and time again, events like this push the limits, testing how much a body can take. But at what cost? Alfredo's tragic end was more than just a personal loss. It was a warning that was ignored by many. How many more fighters would step into the ring unaware that they might never leave it alive? 14. Masatada Tsuji's fatal injury, 2009. March 21, 2009 was a day that should have ended in celebration, not tragedy. Japanese boxer Masatada Tsuji stepped into the ring for a 10-round battle inside Tokyo's Korakuen Hall. It was a high-stakes fight, filled with relentless punches and fierce competition. Tsuji fought with everything he had, refusing to back down. But in the final round, the moment everyone feared arrived. A crushing blow sent him straight to the mat. The crowd gasped. He wasn't moving. The match was over, but something was terribly wrong. Medics rushed in, but there was nothing they could do. Tsuji had suffered an acute subdural hematoma, a deadly brain injury caused by repeated hits to the head. He was rushed into emergency surgery, but some battles can't be won. 3 days later, on March 24th, he was gone. A fighter who had spent years training to survive in the ring had lost his life to the very sport he loved. Could anything have saved him? The brutal truth is that combat sports are unforgiving. A single punch can decide a match or end a life. Fighters enter the ring knowing the risks, but no one truly believes it will happen to them, and yet it keeps happening. Over and over, athletes push their bodies beyond the limit, never knowing if they will be the next tragic name on the list. How many more fighters have to fall before the risks are taken seriously? 15. Mike Mittelmeyer's fatal injury, 2012. April 2012 was supposed to be another opportunity for Mike Mittelmeyer to prove himself. A German fighter with years of experience, he had stepped into the ring before, but this time the outcome would be different. The match was held in Bolivia, but there was a problem. This was an unregulated bout. There were no proper safety checks, no strict medical oversight, no real protection for the fighters. But the fight went on. The first round was rough, and in the second, something went terribly wrong. Mike collapsed. At first, the crowd thought he was just exhausted, but seconds passed, then minutes, and he still wasn't getting up. Panic spread. He was rushed to the hospital, but there was no saving him. He was already gone. The cause of death? A brain hemorrhage, silent and deadly, creeping in without warning. Had anyone seen the signs? Had the blows been too much? Could medical staff have saved him if proper rules were in place? We will never know. What we do know is that he was another fighter who paid the ultimate price. Unregulated fights are dangerous, yet they continue to happen. No rules, no protection, just raw violence until someone falls. 16. Rolls Gracie's hang gliding accident, 1982. The Gracie family name is legendary in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Rolls Gracie was one of their brightest stars. He was more than just a fighter. He was a leader, a teacher, someone who shaped the future of the sport. But in 1982, his life ended in a way no one saw coming. Rolls was known for pushing limits, not just in martial arts, but in everything he did. That included extreme sports. On that fateful day, he decided to go hang gliding, a dangerous hobby that required skill and caution. But something went terribly wrong. High above the ground in the open sky, disaster struck. Rolls lost control, and in seconds, his fate was sealed. The fall was brutal. By the time he hit the ground, there was no hope of survival. The martial arts world was shaken. How could someone so skilled, so strong, be gone just like that? While his death did not come from combat, the loss was deeply felt in the fighting community. Rolls was supposed to shape the future of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but fate had other plans. His death served as a painful reminder. No matter how strong, how skilled, how fearless someone is, they are never truly invincible. His name still carries weight. His legacy still lives on, but his life was cut short far too soon. 17. Justin Eilers' tragic death, 2008. Justin Eilers was a warrior inside the cage, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened on Christmas night in 2008. What should have been a night of celebration turned into a horrific tragedy. An argument broke out at a family gathering in Nampa, Idaho, and tempers flared. In a matter of seconds, his stepfather made a deadly decision. Instead of words, he used a gun. The bullet struck Eilers, ending his life instantly. A fighter who had faced some of the most powerful men in mixed martial arts was powerless against a family member's rage. His career had taken him to the UFC, where he had battled some of the best, but his toughest fight happened far away from the cage. He had no time to react, no way to defend himself. His life was stolen in a moment of senseless violence. The MMA world was left in shock, struggling to understand how someone so strong could be taken so easily. It wasn't a match. It wasn't a fair fight. It was an execution. Justin Eilers fought for his life every time he stepped into the ring, but in the end, he didn't even get a chance. His death was more than just a loss. It was a painful lesson that not all battles happen in the arena. How could a man trained to fight be caught so off guard? His tragic end still haunts those who knew him, a chilling reminder that sometimes the deadliest opponents are the ones closest to us. 18. Rodrigo Goiana de Lima's fatal altercation, 2019. Rodrigo Monstro de Lima never saw it coming. On April 21, 2019, he got into an argument with a rideshare driver in Belém, Brazil. At first, it was just words, a heated exchange between two men who refused to back down. But words turned into rage, and rage turned into something far worse. De Lima had likely faced hundreds of fights in his career, but this was not a fight. This was a moment of blind fury that turned deadly in an instant. The driver, overcome with anger, chose the most brutal form of revenge. He didn't throw punches or fight with his fists. He used his car as a weapon. With no chance to escape, De Lima was struck, his body crushed by the force of a speeding vehicle. The impact was immediate, the damage irreversible. A man who had trained for years to take hits and keep fighting had no defense against a car. He was only 28 years old, a fighter in his prime, but none of that mattered. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. The MMA world was left reeling. How could a trained athlete, a man built to endure pain, be taken so suddenly? His death was not just tragic. It was horrifying in its unpredictability. He had fought in the UFC, he had proven his strength time and time again, but he had no chance against the cruelty of the real world. One moment of anger, one reckless decision, and everything was over. His death serves as a chilling warning. Danger doesn't always come from inside the cage. Sometimes it comes from the last place you'd expect. 19. Elias Theodoros' battle with cancer, 2022. Elias Theodorou was a fighter in every sense of the word. He had fought inside the cage, winning battles with skill and strategy, but nothing could have prepared him for the battle that would take his life. On September 11, 2022, the world lost a warrior, and no one even knew he was fighting. Theodorou had been diagnosed with colon cancer, but he chose to keep his struggle private. He didn't want pity. He didn't want people to see him as weak. He fought in silence, pushing forward as if nothing was wrong, even as his body betrayed him. Cancer doesn't care about strength. It doesn't care about endurance. It takes and takes until there's nothing left. By the time the world learned about his illness, it was already too late. Theodorou had fought countless opponents in his career, but this was the one battle he could not win. He was just 34 years old, a man with so much more left to give, but cancer does not negotiate. Fans were stunned. How could someone so full of life, so full of energy, be gone just like that? The MMA world mourned, struggling to accept that even the toughest warriors have limits. His death was a stark reminder that no amount of training can protect you from everything. Fighters are taught to push through pain, to never show weakness, but some battles don't care about toughness. Theodorou's story is one of bravery, of silent suffering, and of a fighter who refused to let the world see him fall. But in the end, even he could not escape the inevitable. 20. Anthony Rumble Johnson's illness, 2022. Anthony Johnson was a force of nature in the octagon. Known for his terrifying knockout power, he struck fear into his opponents with every fight. But in the end, it wasn't a punch or a kick that took him down. It was something far more insidious, something he could not train against. For over a year, Johnson battled an illness in silence. He kept it hidden, refusing to let the world see his struggle. And then, just like that, he was gone. In 2022, the MMA world lost one of its most powerful fighters, and the shock was overwhelming. How could a man who seemed unstoppable be defeated by something so invisible? His body, once so strong, had become his greatest weakness. He had fought against some of the toughest men in the world, but this was a fight he could not win. The disease took its toll, draining his strength, stripping away the power that had once made him a legend. His fans were left in disbelief. Johnson had always seemed larger than life, a man who could not be broken. But life has a cruel way of proving us wrong. His death was not just a loss, it was a painful reality check. No one is invincible, not even the strongest among us. His story is a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the fight isn't fair. Sometimes the enemy doesn't follow the rules, and sometimes even the mightiest warriors fall.